Welcome to KSB Day. This is the Technology Investment Conference, which we are hosting to celebrate KSB's 68 years in capital markets in Pakistan. We chose technology because technology is very dear to us. With our relaunch, our whole focus was to use technology to drive financial inclusion, to provide access to financial markets to people in Pakistan. So, when we relaunched KSB in April 2018, the launch event was a tech conference. And that was before, tech mushroomed and boomed. And a lot has happened over the last 2.5 years. KTrade app is now downloaded by more than 220,000 people, and it has more than 100,000 downloads. Every day we get like more than 1,000 new registration. And the reason why those numbers are significant is because in Pakistan, the total number of people who invest is 200,000. So, so almost, we have that half of that over the last 12 months on our platform. But tech is also, we think it's a major game changer for Pakistan, because technology is a global industry. Bureaucracy has not yet stifled the growth in that sector, while in all other sectors in Pakistan, like in many emerging markets, there's the structures are oligopolistic in nature. And a lot of that has to do with high barriers to entry, which have been put there by regulation and by and then there's a term which is used over here, which is called elite capture. So we see that in other sectors, and of course, this is not just unique to Pakistan, but tech is one sector which is growing because those things don't exist. And as some venture capital investor said to me that there's no inheritance in ideas. Ideas can come to anybody, and as long as they get access to capital, which is happening in the tech sector, then we can have a new breed of entrepreneurs, which is certainly what's happening. For today, we have 6 presentations today. All the listed technology companies are presenting. So after this session, there will be a presentation by Asif Peer, who's the CEO of Systems, which is the largest software company in Pakistan. It's the #1 IT services company, and it's #1, #2 close to its NetSol, who's been presenting. After that, Salim Ghori, who's the CEO of NetSol. They also have a holding company listed in the US, which trades on NASDAQ. And after that, 4 to 5, Bakhtiar Vai, who's the CEO of Avancian, will be presenting, followed by a presentation by a panel discussion on the state of the industry by TRG, Mohammad Yahiraj from One Load, and Faisal Aftab of Laxon VC. Before I go more into we recently published a long detailed report on the tech sector in Pakistan. I think it was the first ever report written by an investment bank, at least. Before I go into the details of that, I would request Nasir Ali Bukhari Saab to say some words about KSB and welcome you guys to this event. He is, of course, the co-founder of KASB, and he has been involved in developing the capital markets in Pakistan and been instrumental in getting more than $10 billion of foreign investment in Pakistan. Most of the landmark deals. But one thing which I do want to strike out for this particular conference is that many people in Pakistan are not aware that he was also the seed investor in one of the largest and earliest VC funds in Hong Kong, which went public back in the day, which is called Tech Pacific. And he was also a seed investor in Dolly the sheep, which was the experiment to clone the first sheep. So in Pakistan, I hear a lot, by young guys saying that they're the first wave of tech VC fund, but they are not aware that there's a lot of history which has happened before them. So with that, Nasir Saab, would love for you to say some words to welcome people over here.
It's a great pleasure to welcome you all on the 68th day anniversary of KASB. And there is no better way to celebrate than to recognize the tech revolution, which is quietly coming into Pakistan, and some of the companies in the tech sector which are already listed or are startups, they are all looking for the initiatives which government has taken recently, and also the investors in Pakistan and internationally have recognized these companies. Recently, one of our Pakistani tech company was recognized by Forbes, which is the first major sort of a acceptance that Pakistan tech sector companies are now becoming matured and global players. I'm also very happy that the participation today is one of the largest ever on all of our webinars, and it's a global representation. There are many good old friends who have joined us and who have been part of our success story. Some of them, like the institutional investors who came into Pakistan in early times of 1992, 93. They are also here today, and I'm very happy to see their names. It's a great pleasure and honor to welcome you. And with this, I hope that this day will be a very big success and will be remembered in the tech history of Pakistan.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ali.
Thank you for those words. The purpose of this conference is we'll focus more on public markets, because that's what KASB does primarily, and that was the purpose. All of the speakers presenting today are publicly listed companies. And just to give a little bit of background, so I've been a tech analyst in Europe. I started out at UBS covering Nokia, Ericsson, and Alcatel-Lucent. So in 2005, that was a large tech sector in Europe at that time. The combined market cap of these three companies was $700 billion. And then within 3 years, they disappeared. The hardware moved to Asia and software moved to the US. And I became a fund manager investing in emerging markets, managing money for Li Ka-shing, and investing in EMEA markets, starting from Russia, Eastern Europe, Middle East, Pakistan, and extending all the way down to South Africa. Then I moved back to tech research at Berenberg, where I covered everything from Apple in the US to Samsung in Korea, but focusing particularly initially on data centers and semiconductors, and then on fintech. So started covering companies like Western Union, Visa, Ingenico, Gemalto, the smart card space. Now, the interesting thing from that perspective was that in the smart card world, so companies like RFID producer, NFC producers, they all knew and respected Pakistan because of Nadra. Nadra was a case study. Pakistan was one of the first countries to roll out a national EID program and a national e-passport program. UK still does not have an EID. They don't have electronic IDs. We do have electronic passports and not IDs. And even the passports were later than Pakistan. So, back in 2012, when I started covering the smart card space, Pakistan was this, given as a case study. And I think the current chairman, forgetting his name of Nadra, he was a CTO at that time, and he used to give talks and be quoted all over the world. In fact, Pakistan exported its technology to other countries as well. So ideally, a good national ID system should have been the foundations for development of all digital technologies. But somehow that link went missing for many years. And in that time period, India came up with its famous Aadhaar program, where they did biometric capture of 1 billion people. And that helped India develop the payment rails on top and then connect the whole economy and drive a massive process of financial inclusion. I think a lot of that is now starting to come in Pakistan. I think we have seen a marked change in the regulatory space, in the and the approach, especially over the last almost like 12 to 18 months. So we had this period of like 2008 till 2018 when nothing really happened, and now it seems that now again there's a lot of focus where the regulator is making it easier for technology companies to develop their businesses, but also raise external capital, which was a big hurdle before that. So if we look from a public market space, there are 5 listed companies. But what was very striking for me as an analyst who has covered tech companies in Europe for the last 15 years was that the multiples were very, very cheap. And not only, so, companies over here were trading, some of them were trading at like 6 or 7 times PE multiples, the one which were, but what was more interesting was that the framework which people were looking at in the public markets to analyze these companies was not how tech companies are valued. So now people were looking at book value, people were looking at backward earnings, people were looking at dividends, which is of course not how tech is valued. Now, the other interesting thing was that there's a big chasm, there's a big divide between the public markets and the private markets. In the private markets in Pakistan, especially over the last 2 years, there has been influx of money. So it's still very early stage, but we have seen the rise of venture capital funds. A lot of these are offshore, but they have raised money. And in fact, there are studies out there. I think one is done by I2I, which says that if you and I added the numbers. I added some other transaction to the numbers over the last 2.5 to 3 years. There have been more than $200 million which has been invested in the tech sector in Pakistan, in companies of various forms, shapes, and sizes. So the large transaction being, of course, Alibaba's acquisition of Daraz and Ant Financial stake in Easy Pesa. But smaller companies and the smaller tail has also been raising money. So somebody told me that 12 months ago, the normal seed raise for a tech startup in Pakistan was 200,000, but now those rounds have crept up to almost $1 million. So in the private sector, there's a lot of vibrance because a lot of these funds are offshore based. They're raising money from overseas investors, and the multiples they're paying are almost in line with the multiples of similar companies in other markets. But then there's this big pool of capital on the public market side where the valuations are totally wrong, if I use that term, and then they're not in line with how tech companies trade on. So that for me as an analyst, and then we are always looking for mispricing. That was an interesting thing, that even in Pakistan, people are paying higher multiples for private companies in line with the multiples in the region and in line with the multiples and global the multiples. But in the public market space, somehow the public market investors are not pricing that in. Now, so that for KASB, where our job is to help our investors find alpha, that was an attractive opportunity, and hence we published a detailed report with a recommendation on systems and also screening coverage on TRG. But there's some other changes which are also happening, which I thought was very interesting and which led us to host this event, but also why we think there can be massive opportunity in Pakistan on the public market side in technology. So the first one was the rules which PSX changed, and we have Farooq Khan, the CEO of Pakistan Stock Exchange, on this call, and I will call upon him to say a few words in 10 minutes. But so PSX launched what is called the Growth Enterprise Market, GEM market, where they made it's much more easier for technology companies and early stage companies to go public and raise capital. Previously, in order to go public, you needed to be profitable and you needed to have a 5-year track record. So I did this presentation that if the rules of Pakistani Stock Exchange were put in place globally, then Amazon would not have listed, Google would not have listed, Tesla would not have listed. So because Pakistan, the old rules, the old regulatory mentality which existed would not have allowed these companies to go public, because they would have deemed it too risky for investors like us to invest in. So they would have prevented Jeff Bezos from becoming the richest man in the world. But the good thing is that things are changing. So the biggest change, one of the big change, is that PSX changed the rules. They put up a GEM market where loss-making companies and early stage companies can go public. It's much cheaper to go public over here. So this is a big focus area for us at KASB. My colleague Talha Azhar is on the call, and Talha's one of the focus area for Talha is to encourage technology companies such as those who have joined. Some of them have joined this call to go public in GEM, and he will be reaching out to some of you and telling you how that process work and why should you list. So the regulator made the rules much more easier, but also there's a massive pot of money which is available over here. So public market investors in Pakistan have around 5 billion just in the asset management industry, $5 billion, and then you add banks on top and you add insurance. So this pool of money is much larger than the pool of money which right now is available in the private market space. There's a valuation discrepancy, but markets, in capital markets, we believe and we work on the view that markets are efficient, or the mispricing cannot last for long. So there is this massive pot of money in the public market space which is looking for good quality companies. In the tech sector, there are some great companies and which are privately held, which want to raise money to grow, and public markets can provide them with that conduit of raising capital by listing on gem market. And I was surprised that not many people, at least not many people in the tech sector, are aware of this. And I will request Farooq Khan to say something about it in a short time. So I missed in the middle that I also was CFO of one of the largest fintech companies, which was listed on London Stock Exchange, SafeCharge. We had offices from Singapore to the US. So when you book a ticket on Thai Airways, that's SafeCharge when you put your credit card details on the page. So they used to handle around $25 billion of transactions. To put that in perspective, Pakistani total transactions are $1 billion. And the company got acquired for $1 billion. At SafeCharge, I was head of M&A and I was looking for targets. I made acquisitions in Singapore, in Tel Aviv, in Dublin, in Germany. And when I looked at Pakistan, there was nothing to acquire. So this is 2016, 17. And I thought this is so fascinating that that there's a country of 200 million people and where there's nothing over there. So that led me to leave SafeCharge. I became a partner at Autonomous Research, which got acquired by Bernstein, one of the largest asset managers in the world. I was the head of the fintech coverage in Europe. And then I joined KASB to build KTrade and focus on digital enablement in Pakistan. Of course, a lot has, as I said earlier, now this, the tech, there's almost a revolution going on over here. In the financial markets, I still see that there's a lot of pessimism. Generally, in Pakistan, there's a lot of pessimism, there's a lot of fatigue, there's a lot of, I almost think that people have anxiety, post-traumatic stress syndrome. People are always complaining. In fact, we launched a campaign called Complain Na Karo, Invest Karo to address that. But each time I go into tech sector, I get goosebumps just because the energy and the enthusiasm and the optimism in that sector is viral. You get affected by it. And we see that in the numbers as well. So Pakistan tech exports have increased by around 25% per annum. I think that growth rate can accelerate. The companies which are presenting today, they are some of the leading companies in Pakistan. If you look at their numbers, their earning growths have been more than 30% over the last 2-3 years. Some of them have been maintaining that kind of growth rate for over the last 10 years. They're very profitable. Their clients are all international companies, so their revenues are in dollars, their costs are in rupees, so they benefit from exchange rate depreciation. And large blue chip companies buy their products, so they are top quality products and top quality engineers. It's a reflection of their engineers. And not many people know Pakistan produces 10,000 IT developers per year. So it's a big talent pool. The salaries in Pakistan are still 30% cheaper than the salaries in India. In India, it's difficult to find good tech resource because the top guys go to Accenture and the Tata Consulting Services of the world. So the smaller companies are resigned to hire tier 3, tier 4 developers, while in Pakistan, the same cost you'll be hiring tier 1 developers. So all of those things are visible. Of course, there are challenges, the biggest being the internet. I was saying before this webinar started that on this call, I have 2 of my colleagues sitting as backups in case my internet has an issue. So internet, the quality of internet is an issue, and I hope Pakistan can move to better infrastructure in terms of optical cables but with 5G, hopefully that will also leapfrog that and we'll go to better quality of service. So there are, of course, challenges, but challenges, I think we talk too much about the challenges and we often ignore the success stories. And today, it's all about the success stories. Because at KASB, with 68 years of history, we know challenges and we know that persistence and grit and perseverance is often more important than just short-term success. So today is about celebrating the success of these companies a lot. Systems will be presenting in 10 minutes. Before I go into systems, I'll request Farooq Khan, the CEO of Pakistan Stock Exchange, so please say some words, especially about the new gem market and also digital onboarding, which is being enabled for people to invest in. So Farooq.
Ali, Assalamu alaikum, and good afternoon, everyone. And thank you so much for asking me to say a few words. It is actually a real pleasure to be at this forum and the technology investment conference that you've organized. I've had I've had the pleasure and the honor of knowing the founder of the firm, Khadim Ali Shah Sahib, and of course Nasir Bhai is there, who I also know well and have worked with. But going back to the history of the firm, when I started my career and met Mr. Khadim Ali Shah, he was a traditional old style broker, but really was a bridge to the way the market was changing in the 90s, when the 1991, when the market first opened to foreign investors, and he entrusted Mr. Nasir Ali Shah Bukhari, his son, to take the firm and the business forward, and that really, and then now today, we have the new shape of the firm. So it's really exciting to see this growth, within how our brokerage industry is changing, which is symptomatic of what's also happening and the trends that you have touched upon in the tech sector. I will not, because there is so much, and so much more about technology than I do, and we're going to hear some great companies. But maybe just two, three things from a PSX perspective that I would like to highlight. As PSX, our key responsibility is to provide a robust, transparent, and reliable trading platform for both companies to be able to raise capital and for investors to be able to access those opportunities. And one of the key things that we are doing right now to stay up to date with the state of the art technology is that with our Chinese partner Shenzhen, which, as you know, is one of the largest exchanges in the world, we are buying their trading and surveillance system, which is already in the process of implementation and should be fully in place by March next year, which will make sure that PSX technologically is up to date and is world class in its technology platform for trading and surveillance, well into the 21st century. So that's one point I wanted to highlight. The second, which you've already spoken about, the GEM market or the growth enterprise market, and that's something that we're very excited about. The launch of it has been sort of somewhat slow because of the COVID situation, so we haven't done a lot of marketing, but we have now started talking to a number of companies and to consultants and brokers like yourself, and it's ideal for tech companies, although obviously the platform is open to all kinds of small and medium companies to come and both raise capital, as well as I think it will also help in the early stage financing rounds and the venture capital rounds, because one of the key issues which had been holding back larger amounts coming into the VC or the early stage financing rounds was the exit. So now with the GEM market in place, early stage investors would hopefully also feel more comfortable because they'll be able to see a viable, one of the avenues for a potential exit in years down the line. But we are looking forward to working with KASB in particular in bringing some of the tech companies onto the GEM board. The regulations have been made very simple, straightforward. The ongoing corporate governance requirements are much simpler and more straightforward. And critically, the cost of listing and raising financing on the GEM market is been brought down very considerably. So it's much cheaper than going on the main board. Obviously, we hope that over the years, many of these companies that come on the GEM board, will grow and come onto the main board. And the third thing that I wanted to highlight, which also Ali touched upon, is that just this week we have been working over the last few months with SECP, which is the apex regulator, to be able to have a seamless online account opening facility for new investors. It is with all the KYC requirements, AML requirements, as you know, opening whether it's a bank account or a brokerage account anywhere in the world is getting more and more complex, and we have to comply with all such requirements. But we have extensively gone through the regulations, made them much simpler and easier, and it is now possible for someone, whether sitting in London or Dubai or Faisalabad, to be able to open an account from the comfort of their own home or office. They don't have to physically either carry papers or send papers even, or go to any broker's office to do that. For the overseas Pakistanis in particular, there's also the Roshan digital alternative, which KSB has also touched upon in some of the past webinars. As a user of technology, for enabling our business, PSX is committed and will continue to work to make sure that our technological platform meets the needs of both our companies that come to raise capital as well as our investors, and to be able to provide that platform. And we hope to see a lot more, many more companies coming onto list, both on the GEM board as well as the main board. The last point, you touched upon the Nadra experience, Ali, and that is really was an important milestone in our sort of macro tech journey for Pakistan. But more recently, we have also seen the huge success of what is called the SRS program, where within a week, I won't swear by the numbers, but then in the overall quantum, they're right. About 12 million people were given, grants within a week, and it was all done, through online platforms. Whereas you've known a number of developed countries that struggle with sending checks out, and this was in the context of the COVID pandemic. So that is also a very recent, success story which has been lauded globally for Pakistan. So with that, I'll end, and best wishes, and I hope this will become an annual feature, and all the best, and I look forward to some of the presentations. Thank you.
Thank you, Farooq. Thank you for the kind words and for concisely giving that strong bull case for Pakistan. Because there are a few foreign investors and global investors in this call as well. So for me, the main bull case for Pakistan is the thing which you mentioned, that good quality companies are now in the pipeline for going public. I think more companies have gone public since you joined than they did in the 2 years before that. And the new rules which you have changed will allow growth companies to go list in the market. So on the supply side, the pipeline has substantially increased. And then on the demand side, the two biggest hurdles for Pakistan, one was the lack of or less depth of retail investors, because only 200,000 people invest. I think online onboarding will lead to substantial growth in this number. We all know that the regional comparisons in Bangladesh, there are 2 million people who invest. In the US, 60% of the population invests. So in Pakistan, I think allowing digital onboarding will lead to a substantial growth in the retail investor base, which is critical for the growth of the capital markets. And the third thing is liquidity. So as we are aware that, some people on this call might not know that till 2008, Pakistan stock market used to have daily traded volumes of $500 million. At a good day, it would even go higher. Like I think it even touched $1 billion. So it would match, the best exchanges out there. It would, I think Merrill Lynch published a report back in 2004, and they said Pakistan was the top market in Asia. And they said that Pakistani volumes are more than Vietnam, Malaysia, and Indonesia combined. And then in 2008, they shrunk by 90% because, we had, as I said before, we had this period of 2008 till 2018 when, because of volatility in the stock market, there was a regulatory overdrive, which pulled out retail investors, which pulled out liquidity in the market. And that period ended almost in 2018. And what is, since Farooq joined also, we have seen a steep increase in the volumes as well. I think this year we saw a record high volume in the market since the last 10 years. So I think things are changing, and there's evidence of a sharp inflection point. And then for me, for somebody who lives in London, who for most of his career worked in global markets, and then I see this inflection point is very interesting.